So, I'm going to take some time and we're going to go over state government and national government. So, if you get out the study guide that looks like this on Canvas, that's what I'm going to be going off of, but I'm going to be bouncing around. This is just a more detailed way to see the connection between our federal government and our state government. So, if I were you, I would get out your two foldables, the one for federal government, one for state government. I'm going to focus a lot more on state, but if you want, if you get out the CE6 study guide, that looks like this one, that's under the federal three branches module, that's where that one is. So basically, you have to remember the Articles of Confederation first gave the states all the power. The federal government didn't have an executive branch, it didn't have a judicial branch, states had all the power. And that ended up failing big time, which led to the writing of the Constitution. So as we're writing the Constitution, the Founding Fathers said, well, we have to give the states some power. We can't take it all away. So when they were writing the Bill of Rights, they went to the 10th Amendment, which says that all power that does not belong to the federal government belongs to the state government. So powers such as education, health, welfare, safety, the environment, taking care of the Chesapeake Bay, that all falls on the state. That's something that Virginia has to take care of. The national government is not going to care about that. So when we look at the power, we have to look at both the U.S. Constitution, 10th Amendment, Reserved Power Amendment. You have to look at the Bill of Rights, and you have to look at the Virginia Constitution. So the Virginia Constitution organizes our state government into three branches of government: legislative, executive, judicial. So if you look at your trifolds right now, you should see that they're very similar. Let's start on legislative. So instead of Congress, we are going to call our legislative body in Virginia the General Assembly. So Congress, federal, General Assembly, state. The duties are exactly the same that Congress has. The General Assembly has to approve all governor appointments. They have to approve the budget, and they make laws for Virginia, which is exactly what Congress does. Now, Congress also has expressed and implied powers, but that's only protected by the Constitution. Virginia, they just have duties of the General Assembly. If you go to the executive branch, okay, so in our executive branch, at the federal level, you have president, vice president, cabinet, and agencies. For the Virginia executive branch, you have four positions. You have governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and cabinet and agencies. They all function the same. So you heard a new position, attorney general. Attorney general basically is he oversees the state triangle, and he makes sure that every level of state court is doing their job. And sometimes he goes in to support the state on certain cases. So if you look under the powers of the executive branch, it's very similar to the powers of the executive branch at the federal level. The governor, who's Ralph Northam, Democrat, you should know that, he executes the laws of Virginia, prepares a biennial budget for the General Assembly, that's every 2 years, appoints cabinet members, administers the state bureaucracy. Those are all things that the president does, so none of these duties should sound new to you at all. Lieutenant governor acts like the vice president. He's the vice governor, so he has the same duties as the vice president does. The executive branch also has hats of the governor, and those hats of the governor are the same hats that the president has too. So you have chief of state, which is if the governor is giving someone a medal or if he's hosting some foreign leaders in Richmond. Chief legislator when he is signing or vetoing a bill or law. Chief administrator, chief executive, that's him when he's working directly with his other executive branch on making decisions. Party chief of the Democrat Party, whichever party's there. And commander-in-chief if there's an emergency in the state. Ralph Northam could call in the state military to come in and help them out. They had to do that in Charlottesville when there were those riots. No bueno. Cabinet secretaries. So if you look in that packet I gave you about your state government, the governor has almost the same exact cabinets as the president has. And the cabinet helps the president make decisions. They help him enforce those laws. So the cabinet is just extra support for the governor, just like the federal cabinet is for the president. If you look at the judicial branch, you'll notice that that is your judicial state triangle. And that goes back to Virginia District Court, Virginia Juvenile Court, Circuit Court, Court of Appeals, Virginia Supreme Court. The different jurisdictions, you should know the difference between a criminal case and a civil case. So just to go over the responsibilities of each level. So now you know the structure. Looking at the national level of government up top, you have Congress, President, Supreme Court. You should know their duties, you should know their hats, all that. Your federal level of government's worrying about, first, foreign policy. Since states cannot privately trade with other country, your federal government is in charge of all foreign trade. Regulates commerce, so all money coming in from taxes and whatnot, the federal government decides where that's going to go. Common defense, war. We have a federal military for that purpose, protection. When you look at your state government, so just look at Virginia, we're focused on public health. We have doctors, nurses, go get your flu shot. That's part of Virginia's job to market. We worry about your education. Virginia's the only state that has an SOL. We're worried about elections and welfare and all these different state issues the Virginia 3 branches has to focus on. Reviewing how a bill becomes a law in Virginia, same exact way how a bill becomes a law in Congress. You introduce the bill, you work in committees, you do a floor debate, you vote, and it moves on. So again, you really should be able, if you know your federal level of government, you'll know your state level of government, and you're going to know your local level of government when we get there. Just review the primary issues at the state level. This is on the 4th page of your study guide. Education, public health, environment. Revenue's a new word. We're going to be talking more about revenue when we get to economics. You have your 5 hats of the governor, which are the same hats the president has, but he has 2 extra. And just what the cabinet does. So again, this idea of federalism. So we have separation of power, which is separation of 3 branches of government, separate 3 of power branches. Congress makes the laws, executive enforces the laws, and judicial interprets the laws. You're going to hear those 3 words a lot, so get used to that. So, separation of power. Then you have checks and balances. The checks and balances that you have at the federal level are the same exact checks and balances you have at the state level. So veto, overriding a veto, judicial review. Those are all the same checks you have at the state level. So again, review those checks and balances. The third big idea is federalism. That our federal government doesn't have all the power. The federal government is going to share power with the state government. So you have this idea of a cake with 3 different levels. Federal government, state government, local government. Donald Trump, Virginia, Manassas Park. And each one of those levels functions on its own. So I like to say federalism, federal, state, local. Separation of powers, legislative, executive, judicial. And then checks and balances is how each branch limits the others. Okay? So hopefully this video helped you review the idea of the 10th Amendment, the Reserved Power Amendment, that states have reserved powers just for them. And those reserved powers would be education, elections, public health, public safety, things like that only belong to the state. All the other big powers, Foreign trade, common defense belongs to a federal government, and the federal government makes all those big decisions. With this video, just review the different study guides in the PowerPoint and keep working towards success.